Have you ever noticed that some questions just leave you feeling confused, guilty, or even defensive, even when you haven't done anything wrong? That pit in your stomach feeling, when someone asks a seemingly innocent question that somehow makes you feel small, wrong, or inadequate. Carl Jung spent decades studying patterns of psychological manipulation, and he discovered something truly disturbing: manipulators, narcissists, and even psychopaths don't control you through direct orders. They ask strategic questions, questions designed to force you to defend yourself, explain yourself, and eventually give in to what they want. And the scariest part, most victims don't even realize they're being manipulated until it's far too late. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover the 5 most common questions used by toxic people to gain psychological dominance over you. These aren't random questions. They're carefully calculated tactics that Jung identified as verbal landmines designed to confuse you, isolate you, and control you. And when you finish this video, you'll never fall for these traps again. You'll recognize the manipulation the moment it happens, and you'll have the power to protect yourself. But first, you need to understand something brutal about psychological manipulation. You probably think that manipulators are obvious, aggressive, easy to spot. The truth is the opposite. The most dangerous manipulators don't yell, they don't threaten, they don't physically force you. They ask questions, questions that seem reasonable on the surface, but carry psychological poison underneath, and this creates a devastating confusion in your mind. Because when someone asks you something, your brain automatically assumes that it needs to answer, explain, defend. It's a social reflex so deep that you don't even question it. Someone asks, you answer. Simple, right? Wrong. Because manipulators know that questions create a power dynamic where they control the conversation, force you to reveal information, and put you in a position of constantly justifying yourself. Carl Jung called this the persona trap. Your persona is the social mask that you wear to present yourself to the world. Manipulators attack this persona through questions that force you to defend it while they remain comfortably hidden behind their own mask. They ask, you answer. They judge, you defend. And with each cycle, they gain more control over you. And here's the part that's really going to sting. If you're in a relationship, friendship, or work environment where you feel like you're constantly explaining yourself, justifying yourself, defending yourself, you're already being manipulated. This pattern of always being on the defensive is not a coincidence. It's psychological engineering. And the questions you're about to discover are the exact tools being used against you. Jung taught that the unconscious knows the truth. That discomfort you feel when certain questions are asked, that's not paranoia, that's not insecurity, that's your unconscious warning you, this is a trap. But you've been conditioned to ignore those signals, to be polite, to answer all questions, to not seem defensive. And manipulators exploit exactly that social programming. Now, before we reveal the 5 questions, you need to understand the pattern behind them all. Manipulators use questions for 3 specific purposes. First, to collect information about your weaknesses, fears, and insecurities that they can use against you later. Second, to put you in a position of having to defend yourself, which automatically puts them in a position of power and judgment. Third, to create mental confusion, where you start to doubt your own perception, memory, and sanity. Jung identified this as shadow projection. Manipulators project their own dark intentions through seemingly innocent questions. They're testing you, sizing you up, looking for chinks in your psychological armor. And each question is a probe, searching for the weak spot where they can insert control. Now let's get to the first question. And this one is so common, so seemingly harmless, that you've probably heard it dozens of times without realizing the poison behind it. Manipulative question number 1. Why are you being so sensitive? Seems simple, right? Someone offends you, disrespects you, or crosses a boundary. You react by defending your space, and immediately they ask, why are you being so sensitive? And in that moment, something shifts. The conversation that should be about what they did wrong becomes about what's wrong with you. Jung would call this psychological reversal. Instead of taking responsibility for their own toxic behavior, the manipulator reverses the focus onto your reaction. And the question is brilliant because it puts you in an impossible position. If you answer, you're defending yourself against being sensitive, which implicitly accepts that maybe you are too sensitive. If you don't answer, the silence is interpreted as confirmation that you are sensitive. See how this works in practice. Imagine someone makes a cruel comment about your appearance, your job, or your personal life. You express that it hurt you. Their response, why are you being so sensitive? It was just a joke. It was just an observation. Why do you always exaggerate? And now you're confused because part of you knows it was offensive, but another part starts to think, maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe the problem is with me. Maybe I need to swallow more, accept more, tolerate more. And every time you accept this narrative, you hand over a piece of your power. Jung taught that healthy people have clear emotional boundaries. Knowing when something is offensive is not being sensitive. It's having self-awareness and self-preservation, functioning correctly. But manipulators want you to doubt those internal signals. They want you to normalize abuse, minimize disrespect, and question your own perception. The brutal truth is this: you're not being sensitive. You're having a normal human reaction to disrespectful behavior. And the person who's asking why you're being so sensitive knows exactly what they're doing. They're testing if they can make you doubt yourself. And if you accept the premise of the question, if you start to defend yourself against being sensitive, you've failed the test. You've shown that you can be manipulated into questioning your own reality. Hold on, because the next question is even more dangerous. And you've probably fallen into this trap without even realizing it. Manipulative question number 2. Are you sure that's how it happened? This question is a weapon of pure gaslighting. Gaslighting is the technique of making someone doubt their own memory, perception, and sanity. And this question does exactly that. You recount something that happened, something you saw, heard, experienced, and their response is, are you sure that's how it happened? Have you ever noticed how deeply Jung studied memory and perception? He discovered that when someone repeatedly questions your version of events, you start to doubt yourself, because human memory isn't perfect. You know that. And toxic people, well, they exploit that vulnerability. They know that if they plant enough doubt, you'll start to question what really happened. See the pattern? You confront someone about something specific they did or said. They don't deny it directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, they ask, are you sure that's how it happened? Aren't you confusing it with another time? Aren't you exaggerating? Did I really say that? Or are you misinterpreting me? And now you're on the defensive again, You're trying to prove that your memory is correct. You're mentally replaying the details, searching for evidence, questioning if maybe you're confused. And the more you do that, the more insecure you become. The truth is, manipulators use this question constantly because it works. It takes you out of the position of accuser and puts you in the position of having to prove what happened. And even if you're absolutely sure, the doubt has been planted. The next time something happens, you'll hesitate. You'll think, maybe I am misinterpreting things. Maybe I'm not so sure. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. Jung warned that when you lose confidence in your own perception, you lose access to your true self. You become dependent on other people's interpretation of reality. And that's exactly what manipulators want. They want to be the arbiters of truth. They want you to depend on them to tell you what's real and what isn't. 3 people understood this deeply. 2 used it to control partners for years. 1 used it to dominate an entire team at work, but they all had something in common. They realized that, "Are you sure that's how it happened?" isn't an honest question. It's a psychological weapon designed to erase your confidence in your own reality. Now, hold on to that, because it'll make sense when I reveal how these questions connect into a larger pattern of control. But before that, you need to understand the 3rd question. And this one is particularly cruel because it directly attacks your relationships and your support network. Manipulative question number 3. Why are you talking about this with other people? This question has a very specific purpose: isolation. Manipulators know that if you have people around you who validate your perception, who confirm that something is wrong, you have psychological protection. So, they need to isolate you. And they do that by attacking your need to seek support. You tell a friend, family member, or therapist about someone's problematic behavior. And when that someone finds out, they ask, "Why are you talking about this with other people? Why didn't you come directly to me? Why are you airing our dirty laundry? Are you trying to make me look like the villain?" Jung taught about the importance of the collective in validating individual reality. When you share your experience and others confirm that it's abnormal, problematic, or abusive, you have an anchor in reality. Manipulators need to cut that anchor. They need to convince you that seeking external validation is betrayal, gossip, or a sign that you don't trust them. And the question works because it touches on a real insecurity. You don't want to seem like someone who's always complaining about others. You don't want to seem dramatic. You don't want to be seen as someone who can't solve their own problems. So, when someone accuses you of talking to others, you feel guilty. But here's the brutal truth that manipulators don't want you to know. Seeking external perspective on problematic behaviors isn't gossip, it's sanity. It's you checking if your perception is calibrated. It's you protecting your mental health. People in healthy relationships aren't afraid of you talking about the relationship with others. Only manipulators demand absolute secrecy about how they treat you. Jung saw this repeatedly in his patients. Those trapped in toxic relationships all had one thing in common. They stopped talking about what was happening. They were trained through questions like this to keep it secret, and secret is the environment where abuse grows, unchecked. So, if someone in your life is questioning why you seek support from others, see it for what it really is: an attempt to isolate you, an attempt to become the sole arbiter of reality, an attempt to remove your psychological defenses so they can control you without interference. Sound intense? There's one detail that changes everything, and this detail separates unconscious manipulation from calculated and psychopathic manipulation. The detail is frequency and pattern. A healthy person might occasionally ask one of these questions without manipulative intent. But manipulators ask these questions constantly. It's a pattern. Every time you express discomfort, out comes, "Why are you being so sensitive?" Every time you report something, out comes, "Are you sure that's how it happened?" Every time you seek support, out comes, "Why are you talking about this with other people?" Jung called this a compulsion of repetition in the shadow. Manipulators can't avoid repeating the same patterns because it's part of their psychological structure. They're not occasionally confusing you. They're systematically conditioning you to doubt yourself, to isolate yourself, and to accept unacceptable behavior. And that brings us to the fourth question. And this one is particularly insidious because it uses your sense of justice against yourself. Manipulative question number 4. Don't you think you're being unfair to me? This question completely inverts the dynamic. You're trying to express a legitimate problem about their behavior, and they turn it into, "You're being unfair to me." Now, the one who needs compassion isn't you, the person who was hurt. It's them, the manipulator who hurt you. Jung identified this as shadow projection. Instead of recognizing their own shadow, their own defects and toxic behaviors, the manipulator projects the shadow onto you. Suddenly, you're the unfair one, you're the cruel one, you're the problematic one for pointing out their behavior. See how this paralyzes you? You're a decent person, you have empathy, you don't want to be unfair to anyone. So, when someone asks, "Don't you think you're being unfair to me?" you stop, you recalibrate, you think, maybe I am being too harsh, maybe I'm not considering their side, maybe I am being unfair, and in that moment of hesitation, you've lost, because the conversation that should be about them respecting you has turned into one about you being fair to them. And now you're spending energy defending your intentions instead of solving the actual problem. Manipulators are masters at using your virtues against you. Your empathy becomes a weapon they use to avoid responsibility. Your sense of fairness becomes a tool to make you question if you even have the right to set boundaries. Your compassion becomes a shield that they use to block any and all criticism. Carl Jung taught that true compassion includes compassion for yourself. Setting boundaries isn't being unfair. Calling out abusive behavior isn't being cruel. Protecting your mental health isn't being selfish. But manipulators will always try to convince you otherwise. They'll always ask, "Don't you think you're being a little unfair?" Hoping that your natural goodness will make you back down and accept what is completely unacceptable. And now, we arrive at the fifth and most dangerous question of all. The question that closes the cycle of manipulation and traps you in a psychological cage from which it's very difficult to escape. Manipulative question number 5. Don't you trust me? This is the final question, the ultimate trap, and it's brilliant in its cruelty because it transforms trust into blind obedience. You question something shady they did. You ask for clarification on an obvious lie. You express discomfort with a problematic behavior, and they ask, "Don't you trust me?" Jung understood that healthy trust is conditional. It's built through consistent behavior, demonstrated honesty, and mutual respect. But manipulators want you to believe that real trust is blind, unconditional, and immune to evidence. The question works because no one wants to be seen as distrustful. No one wants to admit they don't trust someone close to them. So when they ask, "Don't you trust me?" you feel immense pressure to answer, "Of course I do." And in that moment, you've surrendered your right to question, to verify, to protect yourself. See the full trap. If you say you trust them, you've accepted that you can no longer question suspicious behaviors. If you say you don't trust them, you're the problem. You're the paranoid one. You're the one destroying the relationship. There's no right answer. Only the answer they want, submission, disguised as trust. Jung taught that toxic people confuse trust with control. They say they want your trust, but what they really want is for you to stop using your critical thinking. They want you to ignore glaring red flags. They want you to accept implausible stories without questioning them. They want you to normalize unacceptable behavior, all in the name of trusting them. The brutal truth is this: asking someone to trust you blindly is a sign that there are real reasons not to trust them. Trustworthy people don't demand trust. They build it through consistent actions. Only manipulators turn trust into a weapon against you, making you feel guilty for having a healthy instinct for self-preservation. Now, if you've made it this far, you've just uncovered the 5 questions that manipulators use to psychologically dominate you. You've seen how each question has a specific purpose: to make you doubt yourself, to isolate you from external support, to reverse responsibility, and to turn your virtues into weaknesses. This knowledge is real protection. Protection that Jung dedicated his life to studying, and that can save you from years of suffering. This kind of information makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Toxic people don't want you to know this. Manipulators don't want you to recognize these tactics. Every video like this is an act of collective protection. It's empowerment through knowledge. Knowledge that should be taught, but is hidden. That super thanks button down there isn't just a button for financial support. It's you saying, this information is worth its weight in gold. Keep revealing what others hide. Keep protecting people who don't even know they're being manipulated. It's you investing in content that treats you like someone capable of handling hard truths. And when you click that golden heart, you're not just supporting a channel. You're funding the continuation of this work of psychological protection based on the insights of Carl Jung. You're no longer a victim of these tactics. You're someone who protects themselves with knowledge. Someone who recognizes manipulation when it happens. Someone who has the power to defend themselves. But knowing the questions isn't enough. You need to know how to protect yourself in practice. And that protection comes in 3 layers that Jung identified as essential. First layer, immediate recognition. Now that you know these 5 questions, pay attention when they appear. Don't answer automatically. Pause. Breathe, mentally acknowledge, this is a manipulation tactic. That recognition alone breaks 50% of the question's power over you. Second layer, don't accept the premise. When someone asks why you're so sensitive, you don't need to defend yourself for being sensitive. You can simply say, I'm not being sensitive. I'm reacting to disrespectful behavior. And let's talk about that behavior, not about my reaction. Refuse to enter their game, refuse the reversal. Keep the focus on their problematic behavior, not on your reaction to it. Third layer, maintain your support network. If someone questions why you're talking to others about problems in the relationship, see that as a bright red alarm signal. Healthy people understand that you need external perspective. Only manipulators demand that you keep them a secret. Jung also taught a specific technique that he called observation without judgment. When someone asks one of these manipulative questions, observe the question like a scientist observing a specimen. Not with anger, not with sadness, with clinical curiosity. Why is this person using this tactic? What are they trying to avoid? What behavior of theirs are they trying to hide? This psychological distance protects you from the emotional weight of the manipulation. You're no longer inside the trap. You're above it, observing how it works. And manipulators hate that. Because when you don't react emotionally, when you just observe and recognize the tactic, all of its power disappears. And here's the definitive sign that you're protecting yourself well. You start to feel less confusion and more clarity, less guilt and more certainty, less defensiveness and more firmness. When these questions appear and you feel an internal calm, a voice that says, "I know exactly what's happening here," you know that the protection is working. The next step is to evaluate the person. If someone uses these 5 questions repeatedly, you're not dealing with someone who occasionally miscommunicates. You're dealing with a systematic manipulator, and Carl Jung was clear about this. You can't fix manipulators. You can't cure them with enough love or enough patience. You can only protect yourself from them. That means setting rock-solid boundaries, reducing contact whenever possible, and, in many cases, exiting the relationship completely. Because your first duty isn't to try and save someone who's hurting you. Your first duty is to protect your own sanity, your own mental health, your own right to live without constant manipulation. Carl Jung taught something revolutionary. You don't need anyone's permission to protect yourself. You don't need to prove to other people that the manipulation is real. You don't need to convince the manipulator that they're being manipulative. You just need to recognize the truth, trust your gut, and act to protect yourself. And when you do that, when you choose your own sanity over maintaining a false peace with a manipulator, something extraordinary happens. You regain access to your true self. That inner voice that was silenced by constant doubt starts to speak again. That confidence in your own perception that was eroded by gaslighting starts to rebuild. That inner strength that was weakened by always being on the defensive starts to return. You become you again, not the confused, self-doubting, always explaining version, but the clear, confident, protected version. The version that Jung would say is in contact with the true self. So go ahead, implement this. Start today. The next time someone asks one of those 5 questions, don't answer automatically. Recognize the tactic, refuse the premise, keep the focus on their behavior, not on your reaction, and watch what happens. Watch how they react when their tactics don't work anymore. Watch how you feel stronger each time you refuse to play their game. Because every time you recognize manipulation, you become harder to manipulate. Every time you refuse the premise of a manipulative question, you rebuild confidence in your own perception. Every time you maintain your support network, even when pressured to isolate yourself, you strengthen your psychological defenses. And eventually, you become so protected, so clear in your own reality, that manipulators can't reach you anymore. That's the transformation that Jung saw in patients who learned to protect themselves. They didn't become cynical or closed off. They became discernible. They didn't stop trusting all people. They stopped trusting blindly. They didn't isolate themselves from the world. They protected themselves from specific people who demonstrated toxic patterns. And you can do the same. You have the knowledge now. You have the tools. You have permission to trust your own perception. Set rock-solid boundaries and protect yourself without guilt. Now, before you go, I want you to do something. How many of those 5 questions have you heard from someone specific in your life? Comment the number from 1 to 5 without naming names. Because seeing how many other people are experiencing this will show you that you're not alone, that it's not your imagination, that it's real. And maybe your courage to comment will help someone who's still confused to recognize their own situation.